Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. Today is another AMA episode, that is, Ask Me Anything. I love to answer your questions, and if you have a question you think is going to be of broad interest, send it in. I'll answer it live on the air. Send your questions to victor@victorjm.com. That's victor@victorjm.com. Today's question comes from Marc in Montreal. He writes, "We own a midtown strip mall where there's an adjoining property worth as is about $1.3 million with 18 parking spots. Has a restaurant on the property that will be shutting down in 6 months due to retirement. A developer has an offer on the land for $2 million and would probably let me purchase it for $2.1 million. Our strip mall has long-term leases in an aging building. I see a scenario where a land assembly could convert it all into a 3-story mixed-use building with underground parking that would surely yield enough profit above and beyond both projects. What are the possible short-term and long-term strategies that we could take with this project? I'm considering a multi-phase project where I would tear down the restaurant, build some commercial units, move the commercial tenants there, and then tear down half of my existing building, and move the rest of the tenants, and then finally complete phase 3, where after the last phase I would fill the remaining commercial space. On the second and third floor, I would have residential units, either condo or rentals. Is the extra $800,000 to purchase that corner property worth it? I'm not sure how to do the napkin math, but I imagine a price per square foot to build minus the price per square foot to rent is the way to go. All of the commercial tenants have different long-term expiration dates on their commercial leases, ranging from 7 years to 15 years. There's so many different options of how this could be built. Let me know what your thoughts are." Well, Marc, this is a great question. I love land plays, and there's only a few ways to make money with land. You can take raw land and carve it up, or you can take existing developed properties and create assemblies. Assemblies enable you to create a large enough site to do something with some scale. And then the value of the land is tied to the density that's going to be permitted. So whether you build it or not is immaterial. You're going to get the value from the land and the land play based on the entitlement. That means spending time in zoning. I would not recommend phasing the project. It's too small a project, and you will add way too much cost by doing it in phases. I understand that you're thinking about retaining your commercial tenants, but you're in the middle of a construction site, and it's going to be disruptive to the commercial tenants no matter what. You're probably going to have to find new tenants anyway, higher value tenants. There's no guarantee that your existing tenants will be able to afford the new rent that you will need to charge to make the new commercial space viable. The location you're describing in central Montreal has a few attributes that I find very interesting. The proximity to the subway station means that you have the potential to get higher density approved than the 3 stories that you're permitted by right. And given that you're not in a hurry to develop the site, you're in a wonderful position to take your time and try and get additional height and density. I would not just seek 4 stories, I would aim for even higher. Behind the property, you're backing on some mid-rise residential apartment buildings, but you're far enough away from those small buildings that you could make an argument that you will not cast a shadow on the residential properties, except for maybe a couple of hours in the early morning when the sun is at its lowest in the winter. I personally would aim for at least 5 to 6 stories. When I look at the dimensions of your site, I see a depth of more than 100 feet, which is ideal for an apartment building. In an ideal scenario, you would want the depth of the building to be between 80 and 90 feet. Controlling the corner of the block enables a lot of options for your future building design. In particular, you're going to want the ramp for the garage on the side street, not the main street. The ramp will occupy more space than you think, and the reason is the ramp needs to be large enough to replace the building's transformer should it ever require replacement at some point in the building's life. If I look at the development value of the restaurant that you're contemplating buying, I would estimate the development value based on the gross square footage you hope to build. For example, at 3 stories, the land would be worth the footprint of the lot, built to 0 lot line setback, times 3 stories, and then multiply that by about $60 per square foot. I expect that a price of $60 per buildable square foot would be the going rate in the core of Montreal. That's a number you can easily confirm with a commercial appraiser. That would place the value of the land at $2.26 million, basically what you'd be paying for it. It does add value to the assembly, but it's not huge. What it does for you is it allows you to build a larger building, one that's economically viable. When you measure the distance from the corner to the end of the McDonald's, you've got a dimension of 435 feet. That would make for a huge building, but if you leave the McDonald's alone, you still have 266 feet of frontage. That would give you between 14 and 20 apartments per floor. If you can get 5 to 6 stories, now the land value would double, and you'd be able to value the land For the restaurant, it's nearly $5 million. The total land assembly, excluding McDonald's, would be worth $4.6 million at 3 stories or $9.2 million at 6 stories. And completing the land assembly with the restaurant getting entitlement for greater height would give you a lot of value even without putting shovel in the ground. You could sell the entitled land to another developer. And if you ultimately fail to get the entitlement for the greater height, you still have a project that makes sense. I would be reluctant to touch the property that McDonald's is situated on. The city's not approving more drive-through applications in the core of the city. And while you only have 7 years left on your lease with McDonald's, that site has ongoing value for any fast food that wants a drive-through, whether it's a coffee chain, another burger chain, and so on. The existing drive-through being grandfathered has tremendous value. If you decide eventually to develop the McDonald's site, because it goes through to the next street, you've got a lot of acreage. You could have a similar size project to the one that you're contemplating with the strip mall and the restaurant. You could build a second building of similar size. And if you decide to build that building amenities rich, the second building that you choose to build will be able to take advantage of the amenities in the first building and get you an even better cost per unit. Those are my thoughts in terms of how I would approach this project. I want to thank you, Marc, for a fabulous question. And for the listeners at home, have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.